action!
She's an iconic character, one of the greatest action heroines ever conceived.
She's trying to protect her son and prepare him for an uncertain future, and who can't relate to that?
John, now!
If you could prepare for these things, knowing that they're going to come, can you change your destiny?
Sarah Connor.
Where is he?
Hope is crucial to the story, because if you didn't have hope, then there wouldn't be anything left to fight for.
What we've done, and what we've endeavored to do, and what Josh and our writing staff has done, is to create big ideas and narrative surprises. And I think that that's the best way that we've paid homage to the movies and the franchise.
Come with me if you want to live.
It's one of those formative films for people. So you really have to take that seriously, and the hard part is at some point you have to sort of take that and make it your own.
Three of us sitting at a restaurant, Josh and James Middleton, with 4 chairs. The first thing I said was, "Gentlemen, there's an empty chair here, and this chair is Jim Cameron's." Because I respect him so much and respect what he's created, that I have to give all of myself to make this as good as it can be.
And action!
The most important thing to me is the characters. I mean, I think you really do want to be as true as you can to the characters, but also you have to build on them. I mean, it's different. Sarah Connor in T2, you couldn't have that character exist every single episode in a series. You know, I mean, you need to see a lot different kind of ups and downs in the characters.
The predicament that she was left in after Terminator 2 was outstanding dramatically. Yes, she's, for the moment, vanquished the T-1000, but she no longer has a protector Terminator. She's surely being pursued by law enforcement who would think she's a domestic terrorist. And she's got to raise a 14-year-old son. I thought that was a fantastic jumping off point for a series.
Rather than to make it a series that is, in a sense, a sound-alike or a TV version of or something of that nature, or just kind of retreading things that happened in the movie, Josh was able to actually take the story that had been created so beautifully and enhance it and turn it into this next step, which has become the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Where are we?
Same where. Different when.
There are other things that Josh brought to the pitch that are purely from his imaginative mind. And the biggest one was to use the time travel, motif that is present in all the Terminator movies to move characters into the future.
It's really helped us significantly because it did shake us free from the timeline in a nice, logical way where we could kind of go forth and do what we wanted to do. And I think one of the things that was important to me was not to do a chase show.
The Terminator movies were based on a chase dynamic. If we did that in the series every episode, it would be very boring to our fans, and boring is anti-Terminator.
The mythology is it started in Los Angeles, so it makes sense that we could, if we were going to try to find it and fight it and stop it, that we would be in Los Angeles. And to make a television series work creatively, you want your heroes to be proactive in kind of driving the action.
We can go kill it before it's born. You can stop running, stay in one place, fight.
The date on the tape. June 8th, 1997. Do you know that date?
In terms of casting the show, we went through a fascinating process. It was a 16-week process, and that's long for television. So Josh and I and David Nutter were looking at lots of auditions.
You had people come in that were doing their best Linda Hamilton impression, and it's disturbing in some ways. I mean, you want someone who's going to come in and make it their own.
It was interesting. Lena had not seen the Terminator films, and it was important for her, just as an actress, not to copy that, not to really see that. So, to me, it was about kind of letting her understand the headspace of where Sarah Connor was in T1 and then in T2, and kind of talking through that with her so she could get a sense of the history.
Tell me where they went.
Lady, go to hell.
Where they went, or I'm gonna beat you to death. Don't call me lady.
She's such a great character, besides being known by the public. I haven't watched the movies, so I read it and took her as something completely new.
We can't stay here, John. No one knows us. We're safe. Don't you think that, John? No one is ever safe.
Thomas Dekker was very familiar with the material and was very kind of aware of what he was doing, but also was smart enough to be able to kind of move past the character.
His own personal life is not unlike John Connor with respect to a young kid that's moved around a lot and had, in a sense, a vagabond existence. So in many respects, he could draw a lot of the John Connor sensibilities from his own life, and that really helped make it more real and more interesting.
Isn't that what I'm supposed to be? A hero? Isn't that who I am?
I never once said I'm gonna completely ignore and not incorporate what was done before, but I also didn't say I was gonna make a carbon copy of it, because it's the same thing with any of us who are repeating these characters, is that it's a television series. It has to be, some things work better in a compact 2.5-hour film than they do in a lot of episodes.
What model are you? Are you new? You seem different.
The character of Cameron, I mean, I knew that I wanted Summer pretty much from the beginning. I had tried to cast Summer years ago on a different show in a completely different part. We still saw a lot of people for that role. I mean, you can't just bring one person in. You know, we had seen a lot of actors for that role, and I just kept saying, I want to bring Summer, get Summer in here.
It's okay, John. It's not the first time we've done this.
Josh Friedman wrote the role for Summer Glau. So when she came in to do her audition, really no one else entered our mind after that.
I wanted to take the opportunity to play a Terminator and really go for it and be a robot and get that across, but she's so much more than that. She's very complicated. I didn't want to just play her like a normal girl and then play her like a robot. I had to sort of bring them together and make it believable.
What are you guys talking about?
Just making conversation.
I need reconstructive surgery.
You need a consult. You'll have to call Monday.
No.
The design, the story, the universe of Terminator is a big universe. But you have to stay within the realm of that mythology. And that mythology is not only the story, the narrative, but it's also the aesthetic mythology.
There was a big question of, can we execute in a credible way? And what Jim Lehman showed right from the beginning is that yes, we could. And that gave us freedom to move forward, and it gave Josh and the writing staff freedom to come up with ideas that pushed the effects envelope.
You know, Jim Lima was probably one of the top Terminator fans on the planet that got involved in visual effects. He brought all his love for the Terminator franchise to this, and to me it's always about, whenever you're working with anybody, get the most out of them and let them dance and let them go for it.
You can call Jim up and say, what do you think about this? And he'll come back to you with 5 really great ideas. He's not just someone who executes things.
To create science fiction, which is the realm of ideas, the realm of possibilities, you have to always start with an established foundation. And that established foundation is your story logic, is your design logic, is your world logic. Everything grows from it.
In terms of the early concept drawings, Jim Lima did a drawing of the gun that's assembled in the safe in the pilot. And it was not described more than a really serious, gnarly gun. And Jim Lima took that idea and created something that was beyond what we expected.
What is it?
Hope.
It had to work, it had to be physically built, it had to physically come apart into a lot of small little pieces, and it also had to make sense in terms of its function.
Is this nuclear?
No, not really.
There's these spinning magnets, and there's a reason for that. Is when the plasma turns red, it is injected into this magnetic environment that allows the plasma to form into a cylinder, a billet, and when it gets to the right temperature, then it is injected through this little sphincter that allows it to go into the firing chamber. At that point, you have a choice, either to fire one slug of it out, or you could fire it as a pulse.
From the beginning, I always pitched the Endo was going to look about as close to the old school T-800 as we could.
Studying the design that James Cameron and Stan Winston did is a genius design. It is an incredibly brilliant piece of engineering.
Jim designed a new endoskeleton, that looks very much like previous endoskeletons, but when he started to analyze previous endoskeletons, he realized there were certain things that they couldn't do.
The nut to crack was how far to deviate from the design, and yet at the same time, what I wanted was that the audience, in their first read, went, that's a Terminator. started looking at ways of improving this thing. And if it is a bipedal tank, it is something that's designed to destroy and kill people, then it should be made to be more brutal, and it should be made to withstand more damage. It is an infiltrator. It is a designed piece of machinery created to emulate human movement. And so it is a very complicated thing. It has a lot of pieces that all have to work. Case in point, if you look at the 888 design versus the T800 design, the thighs, the inner thighs on the 888 have sharp blades on them. If you ever get into a situation where that thing could get its legs around your neck, it would cut your head right off. The back of the elbows and the shoulders are improved for hitting and ramming through walls. Also in the torso area, the trunk area, I put like a little beaver tail kind of protector over that area because you could mess up a Terminator by screwing up the vertebrae. Just in case it gets whacked in the torso, it'll still be able to move and operate and function.
Please remain calm.
This Terminator looks similar, and yet it has abilities that are built into its endoskeleton that the T800 didn't have. What I tried to do was take that idea and plus it by also making the replicated skeletal members act as weapons, shields, or cutting devices.
Jim approaches him like he's like an artist, but also like an engineer. So he'd come and say, "Well, I think he'll have better flexibility in his legs, and he'll be able to move better." And you're like, "Jim, I mean, you're really building a Terminator, which I think he would if he could." I think we did.
3, 2, 1, action! And cut!
People want that roller coaster action. That's what they associate along with the visuals and the story point here on a show like this that follows Terminator 2.
Joel Kramer brings an amazing amount of practical experience to any sequence that we're doing so that we can define what our stunts are going to be, practice them, and execute them very quickly.
Action!
The fact that you have a guy on the show who has been a double for Schwarzenegger, who worked on the movies, who knows Cameron, has worked with Cameron, and understands that aesthetic, it's great. I mean, it's great to have a connection.
Josh was very adamant about continuing what James Cameron had created. And the thing is, what's great about a show like this is you can take it over the top because you've got unstoppable machines where the characters can't be hurt.
Having someone who really understands Terminators, how they move, how they fight, which is a big part of it. I mean, it's, there's no reason for Terminators to do fancy martial arts. They hit you and they throw you around and they try to kill you. And I think trying to make that seem visceral and real is important.
We did have Terminator boot camp, so I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to have to do now to play a Terminator? So I didn't have to do any martial arts training, but what we did do in Terminator boot camp was work on taking away our human habits. Terminators don't do anything that isn't necessary. So I couldn't move my hair out of my face or adjusting my clothes.
You might want to put those back in the holster.
We first started working with weapons, and she picked it up really quick.
He was really working with me on being able to hold a gun very naturally and not to move my head at all, not to close my eye. I've worked with guns before, but it's very different using a gun as a Terminator.
I didn't want her to look like a trained FBI agent or a police or somebody militant. She had to look a little different. And one of the things we had to work was that stoic look she has to have of never blinking and showing emotion. And it's hard not to blink. Even with the earplugs in, it's hard not to blink, and she pulls it off. We have 8 days, basically, to get the episode in. It's like a mini featurette. Well, I'll go out and shoot 3 days of second unit of just pure action.
Just need a little more at the bottom, Lane, that's it.
That's easy to fix.
It's like doing a feature but being timed, and there's a lot of action which takes 2 or 3 days when we have to do it in a day. It's exciting and it keeps momentum up.
Joel will come up with some fantastic ideas, and he'll say, this is what I'm thinking of. I'll have to sit back for a minute because you're not going to find this out of a book. It's out of the box.
I've worked with Steve on a lot of projects. I always try to request him on projects.
I'll get the storyboards, and that helps basically everyone in the crew figure out what we're going to do and what I have to do. If a car has to flip at a certain point, I know the point it has to flip at.
Storyboards to me are really important. On this show, they actually give us a lot of rehearsal time. They know where to focus the money on. I'll sit with a storyboard artist and design car chases and stunt sequences. I'll run them by the director and get his input and show him what he needs to get with first unit versus this is what I'm going to get with second unit, so it melds. It's got to be seamless.
Well, challenges are monumental. I mean, you have so much money, you've got so much time, and you got to basically pull a rabbit out of the hat.
I've always known who I am and why I'm here. Protect my son. Prepare him for the future.
There are still people that don't believe that there can be a great drama with endoskeletons. What we have in Terminator is the solution to that.
She would not be the first human fooled by a machine.
You can't just make it up because it is science fiction. That's not a hall pass. You're making it up and not being respectful to drama and real conflict.
How many times are we gonna have this talk?
A lot, I think.
You can get into some of these ideas and play them out in a way that you can't always do in features. Television is a fantastic place to do science fiction.